So we are now at the stage of any new relationship. You want to see what's underneath its clothes. So the first thing we're going to do is going to remove all the fairing and just see what's below it, if it's hiding any secrets. Now, what I find is when you are restoring a bike or just having a look at it, the older it is, the more headaches or nightmares you're going to get. So I predict at least one issue. Hopefully none. Mechanically, the bike seems sorted, but we'll see what's underneath. And just like that, that's one of many. Just keep on going. So the first issue I've come across already is that the nose cone is held together with some wood screws. Let's see what else we find. Another small issue I've come across is that at some point somebody has sprayed over the reservoir bottle, so we can't see if it's full, if it's low, or if it's even empty on coolant. Now, we're speaking with the previous owner. I've got an idea why this has been sprayed. When you've got fairings on, you can't even see it, but this bike, I think he said, was turned into a street fighter before he owned it. So the owner probably stuck this on here to try and make it look a bit cool. Well, they say things always come in threes, and I found the third issue. But unlike the others, which are small, fiddly little issues, I found quite a big issue. Somebody at some point, and I'm guessing it's the Street Fighter chap, has decided to chop the subframe in half so it just takes a single seat. And then what I think's happened is the owner I've bought it off to try and get a seat unit to fit has then made his own subframe to fit the back. To be fair, it's not been bodged or anything. That's not a bad effort, but I will have to think about what I'm going to do here. Now, I do know that these welds here, where it connects to the main frame, they are weak spots on this bike. They do have a tendency to crack if you've had lots of pillions or a heavier rider on there. So I know they can be ground off and a new one put on, but that's a big job. Luckily for me, my dad is a coded welder, so yes, it'll get done in the garage, but that job I might have to leave to a professional. So all in all, not too bad stripping it down. I found a couple of oil leaks that'll be solved with cheap £5 gaskets. I mean, the only big job now really is the subframe and the fairing panels. Other than that, it should be quite straightforward and hopefully enjoyable, and that's why I do this. So next job for me is to put it on stands, take the rear wheel out, and we'll get the swing arm out. So the first thing I'm going to do is undo the bolts on the axle and on the swing arm pivot, just so I can use the weight of the bike against me. And of course, the previous owner has done everything tighter than a tight thing on tight day. No need for it to be that tight. So next is the swing arm pivot. I'm expecting this to be tight as well, but this one should be tight. It just depends how tight it was done when this Harris swing arm went in. Oh, that one's come away too, so that's a bonus. Both are undone. So now that the bike is safely secured on axle stands, I can take the rear wheel out and crack on with the rest. And then undoing the shock from the bottom of the frame mount. And don't forget to take the gear selector off so you can access the front sprocket to remove the chain. All that's left now is to pull out the main axle pin and remove the swing arm. Now that the swing arm is off the bike, I thought I'd compare it to a standard swing arm. I managed to get one for £50 from a breaker. It's in very nice condition for £50. I'm happy with that. I've had the tape measure out. I can see that the Harris swing arm is 20 millimeters longer. You can see here where the chain adjuster would go, that is clearly longer than the standard item. It's also, you can see the plating better. The standard one has got no plating here along the bracing, whereas this one has been plated and welded, very nice. Also a lot on this side as well. But I also noticed that I didn't mention in the video on the rundown in the garage, it's actually got a different shock absorber. Now this to me looks like it's from a 2006 or maybe even the 2007 model. I will double check that before I put that on the internet auction sites for sale. So I've ordered myself a second-hand original shock. Managed to get this one here for £80 on the internet auction sites. It's in lovely condition, and that'll sit in there, and if it pogos as good as it looks, that'll be a great result for the swing arm. But before I can fit all this to the bike, I've got to take off the under tray, sort the electrics, and then cut off that pesky subframe. And here it is, the world famous subframe. Managed to get hold of this nice lightweight original alley one for £125 on the internet auction sites. So all that I need to do really to get this to work is remove the under tray, move the electrics, and then cut the original welds on the original subframe, and then marry this together. Let's see how that pans out, shall we? First things first, I'm going to take off the battery. And then I can disconnect any items that are bolted to the under tray. And then I just need to remove this added on subframe from the original. Before I can just weld this on, I do have to address the previous welds. Now luckily, the chap who sold me this, he's cut it the opposite side of the weld that I need to form. So I need to grind back, hopefully you can see it, these welds so I can have it all dressed up properly. So I'll have to cut each of these welds square and then prepare them so it's ready to weld. And now I've just got to take my time with the grinder. Now that is all 4 welds cut and prepared on the subframe. But now's the tricky part. I don't just cut these welds off straight away. These castings actually had little blobs sticking out so they could mount this and then weld it. So I'm going to try and cut around the outside of each box frame to try and keep those little lugs that it'll go on. It's turning into quite a big job, this. So hopefully you can see this. I've gone around each weld about 5 to 6 mils deep, gone around there trying to not cut these lugs off, and with a bit of persuasion, I think this one's about there. Ah, that's it. Lovely. There you go. Look, you can see the little lugs I've got to line the new subframe up. So hopefully I can dress these up now to make them nice and smooth, ready for the welds. I'm over the moon with that. That's a great result. Well, it's been quite a slow process, but by taking my time and being careful, I've managed to go around each and every part of the subframe mount and save the little lugs that it goes onto. I mean, I'm really happy with this. And the good news is if I get the subframe, it's a nice, tight, snug fit, ready to weld. It's been a big job, but I'm so chuffed that that's there. And then this bike hopefully will just fly together now. And just like that, the welding is done. Now, unfortunately, I thought it'd be simple. I thought I'd get my dad in, we'd do some welding, and we'd do it nicely in the garage. But what I didn't account for is that aluminium welding is completely different to a normal weld. For a start, you need an AC welding machine. Most other materials will cope with a DC welding machine. And they're not cheap either. Average cost for a good AC welding machine is nearly £1,000. And for a little job like this, it just wasn't worth it. I managed to just go into a local welding firm. They worked on bikes before and they said it'd be an hour's work and it'll be £40 per hour is the going rate. So I dropped the bike off, paid them £40, and they've sorted the welds out beautifully for me. It looks just as good, if not better, than the factory welds. And more importantly is we have the rear subframe sorted. We can now take a pillion passenger and mount stuff to it properly. So that's that big job done. You can also see I've got the original swing arm in, the original rear shock in. They just need to be torqued up now. They just got put in so I could take it to the welding firm. But so far so good on that front. I'm actually really happy with this. So the next thing to do will be to service the bike. It's time to service the bike. So what I've got, usual stuff. I've got some oil, I've got a filter. But because I don't know the full history of this bike, I'm going to go a bit deeper with my service. I don't care if they look brand new or they look good, it's going to get new spark plugs regardless. We're going to change the coolant, put new antifreeze in it, and I've found out that the air filter is a K&N air filter. That's a performance upgraded filter. Now, rather than getting a standard one and just replacing it for £13–15, what you can do with a K&N air filter is you can clean it. So I've got the proper kit here. It's got the cleaning spray and it's got the lubricating spray. Now, I didn't know myself until a few years ago, a K&N filter actually needs to be oiled to work correctly. So having the proper cleaning products, cheaper than an OE filter, that's quite a good investment. So everything I run has K&N air filters, and I can imagine I can clean a lot. With that amount of product, that cost me £13. I've also got gaskets. I said I found leaks. But again, because we don't know the history of this bike fully, I'm going to actually do the valve clearances and we'll do an in-depth video of that when we get to it. So I need to take off crankcases so I can rotate the engine to the correct position for each piston. So like I said, I found some oil leaks. I can also change the clutch and put new gaskets on that. So yes, we're going to service the bike. Seeing as though I'm already going to take this off to change the oil leak and change the gasket, I've noticed it's in a bit of a bad way looks-wise, and this casing is on show when the fairings are there. So what I'll do is I'll sand this back, I'll spray it with some engine paint, and hopefully it'll look good as new. So we are now ready to drop the oil. What I've done, and it's good practice, is I've run the engine for just a few minutes to get nice and warm. That helps the oil to get more runny so it'll come out better. That's the plan anyway. It's the never-ending thread, this. And there we have it, that's the oil dropped out. It's quite black, so it's always a good thing to change your oil. Another top tip is to put the bike on the side stand. That way, if the plug's on that side, there's quite a lot of oil that won't escape if you leave it square on the paddock stand. Now we can remove the oil filter. Now, like on most Superbikes, it's tucked away there behind the downpipes. So because we've had the engine running, just be careful because that will be hot. But the oil filter should be hand tight. Now, when I say hand tight, I mean it's going to be tight. But we should be able to get it. Oh, there we go. With our hands. There we go. Let the oil go into the bowl. And then another top tip is when you get your oil filter now and you don't know what to do with it, just get your rubber glove and flip it around your oil filter. Easier said than done when you're on camera, so we don't drip oil all over the garage. And now it's just a matter of letting all that drain. I think I'll go have my tea.